And we're back for another Gab with Abigail. If you aren't back, and this is your first time on my channel, hi, welcome to Gabs with Abigail, where we talk about the Bates and Duggars and other D-list fundies. For today's video, we are finally we're finally picking back up the Growing Up Duggar series. And so I know it's been a year since I did part 1 of this chapter 5. I'm so embarrassed. So we're going to finally go ahead and finish it. Identifying character qualities we hope for in a future husband. We're not saying the goal is to find a perfect person. As far as we know, no such person exists. We all make mistakes and need God's forgiveness, and so will the young man God brings to you. On the other hand, it's unlikely that an angry, self-centered man who is lazy and a poor money manager will suddenly evolve into husband and dad of the century. We're also not saying he has to be the best-looking hunk of a human flesh ever created. Sure, we all look at outward appearances and at first may be attracted to an individual based on his looks. But God urges us to see what he sees, the condition of the heart. Galatians 5 verse 22 gives a great list of qualities to look for in a potential spouse. If a guy you are considering is not growing in peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, he's just not a good marriage prospect, no matter how handsome or successful he seems! Exclamation point. Remember, you're considering not only what kind of husband you will have, but also what kind of father your children will have. Honestly, solid advice. Those are good things that you want to look for in this potential spouse. A godly man like our dad. What all of us Duggar girls hope for is a husband like our dad. But we know that's asking a lot. It is always going to be... Let me keep going. No, I'll just say it. It's always going to be weird how this cult, hyper focused on this idea of, you want a man like your dad. You want a man like your dad. You want a godly man like your dad. And, some of these people's dads were terrible. And it's really so crazy. Y'all remember the Duggar girls' room and it had a picture of their father in it? That's so weird. I'm sorry. Obviously, yeah, that's your parent. And so, that's cool to have a, photo of them. That's nice. But it's in the weird, creepy way of you want a guy like your dad. It was a picture of him younger. And it wasn't even a regular, up-to-date photo of him. It was a picture from him when he was younger. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Because I don't have that same kind of relationship with my father. And I definitely have a photo of my mom in when she was younger in my room. But it's just it's the context, I guess, of knowing that there is this strong emphasis on wanting to find a guy that's like your dad. It's just kind of creepy a little bit. And, I know people say, and I've said this in a past video about how I've seen it in my real life, but that, people are attracted to people who are like their father. That's the thing with girls. I totally get that as a reference. I totally get that as a thing. I do kind of believe it to be true. But I feel I don't know, the way that they describe actively looking for that, I don't know, it's just kind of creepy in the context of the cult. I don't know. Obviously, if you have a good father, you should want to look for those kind of qualities in a man. Obviously, that makes perfect sense. But it's just the way that they say it. You know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying? That video of Erin when she's oh yeah, I want a guy like my dad. And then when they have their show, the United Bates of America, and they say the same thing.
I want a guy like my dad. What do you think?
My dad is awesome.
Yeah, we'd be lucky if we found one like him.
And we're back for another Gab with Abigail. If you aren't back, and this is your first time on my channel, hi, welcome to Gabs with Abigail, where we talk about the Bates and Duggars and other D-list fundies. For today's video, we are finally we're finally picking back up the Growing Up Duggar series. And so I know it's been a year since I did part 1 of this chapter 5. I'm so embarrassed. So we're going to finally go ahead and finish it. Yeah, so let's get into it. Identifying character qualities we hope for in a future husband. We're not saying the goal is to find a perfect person. As far as we know, no such person exists. We all make mistakes and need God's forgiveness, and so will the young man God brings to you. On the other hand, it's unlikely that an angry, self-centered man who is lazy and a poor money manager will suddenly evolve into husband and dad of the century. We're also not saying he has to be the best looking hunk of a human flesh ever created. Sure, we all look at outward appearances and at first may be attracted to an individual based on his looks. But God urges us to see what he sees, the condition of the heart. Galatians 5 verse 22 gives a great list of qualities to look for in a potential spouse. If a guy you are considering is not growing in peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, he's just not a good marriage prospect, no matter how handsome or successful he seems! Exclamation point. Remember, you're considering not only what kind of husband you will have, but also what kind of father your children will have. Honestly, solid advice. Those are good things that you want to look for in this potential spouse. A godly man like our dad. What all of us Duggar girls hope for is a husband like our dad. But we know that's a lot. But we know that's asking a lot. It is always going to be... Let me keep going. No, I'll just say it. It's always going to be weird how this cult hyper focused on this idea of you want a man like your dad. You want a man like your dad. You want a godly man like your dad. And some of these people's dads were terrible. And it's really so crazy. Y'all remember the Duggar girls' room and it had a picture of their father in it? That's so fucking weird. I'm sorry. Obviously, yeah, that's your parent. And so, I mean, that's cool to have a, photo of them. That's nice. But it's in the weird, creepy way of you want a guy like your dad. It was a picture of him younger. And it wasn't even a regular, up-to-date photo of him. It was a picture from him when he was younger. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Because I don't have that same kind of relationship with my father. And I definitely have a photo of my mom when she was younger in my room. But it's just it's the context, I guess, of knowing that there is this strong emphasis on wanting to find a guy that's like your dad. It's just kind of creepy a little bit. And, I know people say, and I've said this in a past video about how I've seen it in my real life, but that, people are attracted to people who are like their father. That's the thing with girls. I totally get that as a reference. I totally get that as a thing. I do kind of believe it to be true. But I feel I don't know, the way that they describe actively looking for that, I don't know, it's just kind of creepy in the context of the cult. I don't know. Obviously, if you have a good father, you should want to look for those kind of qualities in a man. Obviously, that makes perfect sense. But it's just the way that they say it. You know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying? That video of Erin when she's oh yeah, I want a guy like my dad. And then when they have their show, the United States of America, and they say the same thing. It's a little bit creepy the way it's always talked about. The way that they say it. Whereas with other people, where it kind of happens as a coincidence, or that, that is a good thing. I don't know, it's just weird. It's weird. Dad has demonstrated a selfless attitude over the years and has given of himself in so many ways, modeling to us the heart of a true servant. And that's certainly something we desire in our future husband. At one time during their early married years, Dad worked multiple jobs to keep things afloat and to maintain his and Mom's resolve that she would stay home with us kids. And even at the end of a long work day, he has always made time to play with his kids no matter how tired or exhausted he may be. He especially loves to do little extras for Mom and even us girls. On occasion, he has taken out for special father-daughter dates, and often when he's getting something like flowers or coffee for Mom, he'll get something for us too. Plus, while Dad makes the boys save up and buy a car of their own, it has been his goal to provide his girls with vehicles to drive just as an extra expression of Dad's love and care for his girls. That is nice. Dad would be the first to tell you that God has, quote unquote, grown him a lot over the years. Growing up, Dad didn't have much of a father figure himself. I keep saying it, that all of this shit is rooted in Jim Bob's daddy issues, and he just should have gotten a fucking therapist like everybody else. But when he was about 10 years old, he was reading through the book of James and came across the verse that says, "If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, which giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him." Dad stopped right then and asked God for wisdom. He desired to be a spiritual leader for his own family one day. God heard his prayer and gave him wisdom and guidance. When he and Mom were married at a young age, God guided him through his word, the Bible, and also allowed him to learn through the good examples of some other men at church. Today, Dad is not a perfect man. But he is a humble man. I'm going to insert this clip where they're on like an expedition or whatever. They go camping and all the boys are supposed to be doing something. And they're crossing the lake and Jim Bob is with them, or like some stream. And everybody is like doing fine or something like that. And like Jim Bob falls and it's like embarrassing for him, I guess, because all the other guys are fine and he's the oldest person there. And he like gets back up and checks his wallet and he's like, wallet's still full or some shit like that. And it's like, okay, humble.
My dad turned it into a competition to see who could get across the water first. And with that in mind, he thought he was just gonna run across. Oh! When he started to run, he slipped on some rocks and fell all the way into the river.
He won first place for getting in the water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's my wallet. It's still all right.
He's not a perfect person though. We all tend to do those things. You know, he's a flawed person like all of us, but you know, humble. I get it. And he's not afraid to admit his mistakes and ask forgiveness if he messes up. Dad is a man of character. He treats Mom with love and respect. He provides for our family, and he supports Mom fully in running our home. He praises her efforts, and he never belittles her, makes fun of her, or uses her as a negative example for anything. He also makes his family a priority. Dad doesn't own a bass boat, doesn't take week-long hunting trips with his buddies, doesn't spend Saturday mornings on the golf course with his men friends. Loser! Those are normal, healthy things to like do. Like, it's okay to have a hobby outside of your friends and family. Like, but I do get it's a big family, so you probably should be taking this extra time in a way that other people don't. He says his children are his hobby, and he obviously loves being with us. He is our family's spiritual leader, and also its number one cheerleader. Gotta love this culty patriarchy part of this book. We just hope our children are blessed by their father as we are by ours. That would mean we desire the man we marry to be honest, hardworking, generous, and ministry focused. It doesn't mean we have our hearts set on marrying a pastor. A man doesn't have to be a pastor to be in full-time ministry, because as Christians, we are to be a light wherever God places us. In our eyes, there is no difference between full-time ministry and being a Christian mechanic, or a Christian doctor, or a Christian politician. We need more men who are willing to proclaim Christ in the workplace and realize that there is no such thing as an off-duty Christian. We just pray that whatever work our future husband does, he uses it as a ministry for God. Okay, so the camera fell over, so we're at a completely different new angle, and the camera is dying, so let's see if we can make it through this. I'm going to read at lightning speed. All right, a gentle spirit. We already mentioned anger as a red flag to avoid at all costs, but it is such a destructive character flaw that we want to talk about it a little more before we move on. Our goal is to find a man who has a gentle spirit, not one who regularly loses his temper and spews out anger. Jana, mentioned in an earlier chapter how sad it was for me to hear girl after girl during Journey to the Heart retreat say that her dad's anger had caused what seemed to be irreparable harm and hurt within her family. I don't know, babe. Like, so, I mean, I feel like is the cult, like, this is kind of, that's scary. Like, they say these kind of things, and it's like, actually, that's really not good if you're hearing girl after girl after girl say that her dad, who has complete and total control of the family, has an anger problem. And then also that Gothard is preying on those kinds of girls. Oh, Jesus. The truth is that all of us must learn to deal with our own emotions and feelings when something doesn't go the way we hoped. The Bible says we should all strive to be swift to hear, low to speak, slow to wrath. James 1, verse 19. Often the way a person responds to a situation is even worse than the situation itself. We recall an incident that happened years ago, ironically during fellowship time after church. Every week it is our custom to share a meal together after the service and spend time, sometimes several hours, talking and sharing fellowship with other families in the church. During the fellowship time one hot Sunday afternoon, Jill thought it would be fun for all the kids to have a water balloon fight. She made sure Dad was okay with the plan and then recruited younger brother James and a couple other siblings to help fill several dozen balloons with water. Finally, they carried the buckets of balloons outside, and soon the water bombs began to fly. The kids had a great time. Lots of shrieks and running and throwing with water splattering in all directions. When a dad of a visiting family heard the noise and saw his children were getting wet, he came outside and exploded in rage. "Who said you could do that?" Everyone froze as he continued to shout in anger. Even though she was a rather confident 16-year-old at the time, Jill hid. His boiling anger frightened her. It frightened all the kids. She later apologized to the family, and so did Dad, but the angry outburst made an impression. Another memorable, who do you guys think that is? Leave your comments. What family do you think that is that we know? If it had to be one of the dads that we know from the fundies, who do you think it would be? Even though it's probably not, but who do you think it would be? Another memorable incident came about while we were on a outing to enjoy one of the Duggars' favorite sports, broomball. It's an offshoot of ice hockey, but is played in tennis shoes instead of skates. And the goal is to get a ball into the net with something similar to a hockey stick. That means those lacking traditional hockey skills are welcome to play. For several years, we used to play broomball as a family at the local ice rink, which sets aside certain times for the game. Those sessions taught us that sports can reveal a lot about a person's character, including his or her temper. Being competitive is great, but many times we saw fits of anger from some of those competing. One night, a young man, furious after losing, threw his broomball stick, smashing it against the wall, so that pieces flew in all directions, and the stick wasn't even his. I mean, so which brother was that? Do you guys really been playing with other families? You didn't say that in this description of broomball. Which sibling do you guys think it was? Leave your comment. We want to know right from the beginning if a young man we are interested in has a problem controlling his temper, because if he does, that's something he needs to seriously work on before he even thinks of setting his sights on marriage. Just as it's helpful to us to see how a guy reacts when one of our young siblings spills a cup of chocolate milk on his new shirt, it's also helpful to see how he responds in other situations, including sports. Is he angry or gracious in defeat? Does he fume for hours or congratulate the winner, put the loss behind him, and move on? Equally important is how he handles winning. Does he gloat and boast, or does he shake his hands with his opponent and offer encouragement? Questions like these are reasons why we believe more reasons why we believe in family visits and a variety of family activities during courtship rather than one-on-one dates. Don't get us wrong, there is a time and a place for a romantic dinner, and some good communication can be enjoyed in that setting. But a man's character may be more apparent by observing him in everyday situations and interactions. I mean, yeah, everybody sets the goal of like introducing the person that they're interested in to their family, because you do want to see how they are like in that family dynamic. And then of course it's always really good to see like your person around children if you're potentially like you guys want to have children in the future, like you're somebody who wants kids, and they want kids, like that's definitely a good thing to look for. But y'all take it a little bit too extreme with that. It's just so important to like, I mean, like, I don't know, I just feel like a little bit extreme. Like I feel like you're like, they're adding a little bit of extra emphasis as if like courtship is special for the family setting things, when it's like, that's healthy for every relationship, and most people do that, like in general, like and also that like just in the time that we're in. So I'll say this in two parts. Like, if you are somebody who lives at home, like it's probably going to be a thing that your partner is around your family a lot, just because by virtue that you live at home. And then also though, if you don't live at home and you aren't around your family a lot, I mean, obviously then your person isn't going to be able to be around, like you guys aren't going to be able to date around with like being around family. But I get that this is all catered towards courtship and blah, 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 blah. But like, you get what I'm saying? Chivalry. It warms our hearts when we're around young men, including our brothers, who are courteous and quick to practice the fine old art of gentlemanly chivalry. Some of the things that they say in this book, Lord, like the verbiage. Some women these days think that allowing men to help them with anything makes them appear weak, and they refuse to take a man's hand to help them down a step or object to a man's offer to help them carry a heavy load. I'm not going to speak for white feminism. However, a gentleman's courtesy is not about women being weak or strong. It's about men needing to be men. Oh, we're getting into the misogyny part of this chapter of this book. Okay, we love it. Gentlemanly behavior is cultivated as they learn to serve others and treat ladies as ladies. We encourage these efforts in our family. One reason being, we know that somewhere out there, some good Christian girls are praying for the young man God intends as their future husband, a godly, courteous, thoughtful young man who might just turn out to be one of our brothers. Every day, Dad seeks to model genuine chivalry for all of us. To the boys, it's an example of what they desire to become, and to us girls, it's a mark of a gentleman and something we desire to see in our own spouse one day. Dad has always been sensitive and caring towards us kids, but especially looks out for his girls. He made it known early on that boys were to treat us girls with respect, and while we all enjoyed climbing trees or playing sports together, Dad would remind the boys that we are not the chums who should receive a knuckle on the shoulder or a serious whack over the head during a friendly sibling pillow fight. Why? It's just for fucking fun. Relax, bro. Dad always wants to demonstrate this kind of gentlemanly behavior for all of us, especially the boys, but sometimes he forgets. He asks us to help him with reminders when needed. Years ago, he was working on honoring Mom in several specific ways, including remembering to open the car door for her. He had always done this during their earlier years of marriage, but recently, since we'd outgrown our 15-passenger van and had to transport everyone in 2 separate cars, it hadn't been happening as frequently. Mom agreed to help him remember to do this by waiting and giving him the opportunity to come around to her side of the car. One afternoon, they headed to the local paint store to pick out paint for one of our rental houses, and just as Dad got out of the car, he got a phone call. Distracted by the call, he proceeded on toward the store and was almost to the door, continuing his phone call, when Mom, still waiting in the car, leaned over and gently tapped the horn. I'm sorry. Say what you want about that. Dad turned around puzzled and spotted Mom laughing and waving from the door from the front seat of the car. Dad realized he had forgotten to open the car door for her and came running to get her. We kids laughed so hard that night as they recounted the entire event to us. Apparently the horn honking worked. Now Dad almost never forgets to open the car door for Mom or any of us girls. But these days our brothers often beat him to it. They are all striving to become courteous and thoughtful young men. When we were all at a restaurant recently, it was pouring down rain, and Jedediah jumped on the opportunity. He grabbed the only umbrella in the bus, and in groups of 2 began escorting his mom and sisters inside. We didn't take this for granted. We praised his efforts and told him, "Jedediah, you're such a gentleman, thank you." And he beamed at the compliment. Okay, Katie, shout out to you, getting a nice chivalrous husband. The other day, when we were all outside enjoying a vigorous game of volleyball, Justin disappeared inside and then came out carefully, carrying a tray loaded with cups of ice water. Care for a glass of water, ladies? It sure hit the spot, and we thank Justin profusely for his thoughtfulness. Okay, Claire. James must have been listening, because a few days later, he did the same thing, bringing everyone water when we were all outside on a hot summer's day. James is actually a villain, so we're going to ignore that. Members of the TLC film crew, who also have become like older brothers to us, have also encouraged us to marry gentlemen. When producer Sean took us girls to coffee a while ago, he opened the door for us and said, "Chivalry isn't dead. Let me tell you something, gals. Don't even consider marrying a guy who doesn't open the door for you." You're right, girls. I agree. Now, if you came to the Duggar household today, you would probably find some elbows on the dinner table and maybe even a boy who forgot to wash the dirt from behind his ears. But the goal in our household is for guys to treat gals with the utmost respect and honor by giving up their chair, opening doors, and looking for ways to put women and children first. Respect means a lot in our family, and courtesy counts. I don't know. I feel like it's respectful to me for you to have good hygiene. Personally, making a list. As we older Duggar girls and boys have entered this chapter of our lives, Dad has encouraged us to write down a list of things we desire in a future spouse. And no, this isn't a place to write down wishes for tall, dark, and handsome, but to focus on character, personal standards, and other qualities. I have a list like this too. I'd read it, but that sounds kind of personal. We already mentioned, you know what? I am talking to somebody right now. I'm going to read that list and see how he fits. You guys, this book, honestly, helpful. We already mentioned that some of the non-negotiables are that he must be a Christian and he must love Jesus as much as we do. He should have a love for children because the Bible says repeatedly that children are a blessing from God, a reward from him. In addition to being slow to wrath, he needs to be a good steward for his money. He needs to be a good steward of his money with the goal of living debt-free within his finances. And then there are the other character qualities we desire in a spouse, including gentleness, deference, and gratefulness. While this list serves as a guide in our evaluation of a suitor, the reason for writing it up, not so that we can constantly be comparing it to every guy we meet, hoping the glass slipper will fit and he'll be our prince-to-be, Dad has encouraged us to write out these lists so we can turn them around and use them to examine our own lives, asking ourselves, am I slow to anger? Am I wise with my finances? Am I striving to display these character qualities in my own life? Everything we ask of others, we must first demand of ourselves. You know why that makes me self-reflective? Because when I think of my list, obviously there are things on it that naturally I feel like are a part of me that I do for others, or that I have quality characters that I have. But some of them I'm like, there isn't a way for me to show that back or reflect that back. It has been interesting to see that the things that bug us the most about others' lives are often issues we struggle with ourselves to some degree. I don't know, when you get the ick, you get the ick. I don't feel like it's because I'm doing something. Like there's been a tweet that's going around Twitter right now that was like, what's the pettiest reason that you stopped talking to somebody? And I feel like those petty little things aren't necessarily things that you do. It's just really like, oh, this gave me the ick in the worst way. This one time, no, I'm not going to share that story. That's rude. For instance, if we are extremely sensitive to someone else's arrogance, we should search our own hearts for an attitude of pride, whether it is our own achievements or in our voicing our strong opinions when it's not our place to do so. Dad has reminded us that as Christian young ladies, it is vitally important that we always remember we have been adopted into the family of God, and our Heavenly Father is the King of Kings. It is also crucial for Christian gals to understand that we cannot conform our patterns to a thoughtless lifestyle and still expect to somehow marry a godly prince. We need to always keep in mind that if we desire to marry a godly man, then we must strive to become the kind of godly girl a godly man will be attracted to. Godly woman. God desires to see us grow in character and live by his principles, and for us to have a strong relationship with him, which is the best foundation and preparation any of us can make for a future marriage relationship. Understanding what a Christian guy looks for in a future wife. So far in this chapter, we've talked about we've talked about what we girls are looking for in a future husband. As we were pulling together information for this book, we thought it would also be interesting to ask some of our guy friends what they are looking for in a future wife. So we sent out a little survey asking 15 of them to answer a few questions. Obviously, this is a small and totally unscientific survey, and it went to our friends, many of whom share our Christian beliefs. They range in age from 16 to 29, and their professions range from farming and construction to politics and graphic design. One is an attorney, another is a Marine Corps officer. All of them said they notice how a girl gets along with her parents and siblings. Some said they watch her attitude in responding to her mom and dad. When we asked the guy to describe in one word the most important character quality a Christian girl can have, we got these answers: integrity, purity, respectfulness, virtue, charity, and faith. One guy said the most important character quality is that she's genuine, someone who's real in her love for people and in her compassion for others, real in her heart for God, and understanding of her own shortcomings. Most of them said the first thing they notice about a girl is something related to her physical appearance. Most surveys said they like girls to have longer hair, they like girls who smile, and they appreciate when a girl is modest. We asked the guys to name some of the things they're looking for in a girl. Here are some of their answers: outgoing personality, not stuck up, genuine love and loyalty toward her family, a girl who loves the Lord as much as I do and has a desire to share her faith, a girl who has a hunger and thirst after righteousness, one who is sensitive to the Holy Spirit, a girl who deeply cares. The Jill Rodriguez jumped out. A girl who deeply cares about her faith, hearing and obeying the voice of God, and fulfilling his purpose and calling for her life. What if your calling for your life is to be a doctor? All of these girls tell them not to be something else. Purity, ministry focus, compassionate spirit, a godly girl who honors her parents and who esteems motherhood. My God, this list is long. Is she sensitive to God's Spirit? Is she serving the Lord in her single years? Does she dress modestly? Good communication skills, common sense, love for Jesus, always seeking God and not a relationship. If she gives her heart to God, then God will give her heart to the right guy. Does not seek attention from guys by being flirtatious. A sweet, compassionate girl who exhibits genuine kindness leaves a deep impression on me. An equally important quality is faithfulness. I guess maybe it's so long because of their different answers from different people. I feel like they should just condense this into one list of their overall opinion. But anyway, I guess they're saying if you hear it enough, it drives home the point that this is what they're looking for. A sweet, compassionate girl who exhibits genuine kindness leaves a deep impression on me. An equally important quality is faithfulness. It's much harder to determine, but it's probably the final determining factor for me. I need someone to faithfully serve God alongside me, faithfully hold me accountable, and someone to faithfully help me grow deeper spiritually. A godly girl, reading the Bible, getting to know God deeper each day, and involved in some sort of ministry, preferably music ministry. I like it when I see a girl having a servant's heart and respecting her parents. A girl who demonstrates her love for God by honoring her parents, by treating her siblings like they are best friends, and by being humble. Does she have a growing love for God, and are we on the similar paths to knowing Him? Does her love of God form her character, values, and virtues? Can we help each other grow in the Lord? A godly, spiritually solid girl who has a good relationship with her parents and a ministry mindset. Does she have the character qualities of a Proverbs 31 woman? This long-ass list. Taking a look at courtship in action. We have seen that when marriage is brought together in God's way and in His timing, His blessings follow. The way our oldest brother Josh and our dear sister-in-law Anna met and pursued marriage has been a huge encouragement to us as we wait for God's best for us. We asked them to share their story of courtship in this book so that you might be encouraged too. Josh: as I grew older and began to realize that there were two different kinds of people in this world, men and women, my parents shared with me a story of a young girl who asked her father a question about that subject. Her father replied by handing her his suitcase and asking her to carry it. The little girl tried to pick up the suitcase, but quickly said, "I'm not big enough to carry it, Daddy. It's too heavy for me." Her father had illustrated his point. He told his daughter, "Some things are too heavy for you to carry right now, but when you're older, you'll be able to handle them." It was that father's hope and also my parents' desire that inspired them to train their children to guard their hearts and keep them pure, knowing the day would come when they would be able to carry that suitcase. I don't get it. What kind of question did she ask him? Realizing that there were two different kinds of people in the world. Well, like, shared a question about the subject. What was the question? And also, if this is like a reference to sex, like Josh,
Chelsea, come on now.
You bought the same jacket as the girl.
Chelsea, come on now.
Bro, you bought the same outfit as the girl.
Chelsea, come on now.
Come on now, Chelsea. Anna. When I was 13, I first heard about the Duggar family through an article a friend sent our family. The Duggars had 13 children at the time, and I thought it would be fun to meet them one day. Then after the Duggars' first show aired on cable television, some friend sent us a copy of the 14 Children and Pregnant Again video. As my family watched it, I noticed how Joshua, then 16, talked about the importance of guarding his heart and waiting for someone who would really love him and wasn't going to just get carried away with emotions. I was so excited to see another family who was brought up so similarly to the way our parents were training us. But never would I have dreamed what God had in store. Would be nightmares. Josh. As I became a young man, I was constantly tempted to have lots of wrong thoughts and often battled to keep my heart right. One of the greatest things that helped me in my struggles was my parents' commitment to accountability. They were faithful to talk with each one of us children if we were willing to share honestly and openly with them to maintain a clear conscience. I learned quickly that great freedom can be achieved by accountability, but that deep accountability requires humility and openness. I often had failures in my early teenage years, but found that I had a clear conscience only when I was willing to confess my thoughts and temptations quickly to God and to my parents. See 1 John 1, verse 9. I could say a lot about that statement. We know all the things that Josh has confessed to his parents during his teenage years, during his adolescence. And I have a video that I will link above me where I expound upon those thoughts. But yeah. It's a little bit crazy. It's a lot to describe these as struggles and battling to keep your heart right. Anna, as I was growing up, my parents, like Joshua's, always took time from their busy schedule to listen to each of his children and allow us to share our hearts. Over time, my two oldest sisters followed God's principles and were happily married. It was so exciting to see the fruit that came after all those years of guarding their hearts and trusting God to lead them in his timing, and with the confirmation of both sets of parents giving their blessings. Mind you, her second sister definitely divorced that husband. I realized the importance of sharing my heart with my parents and waiting for God's very best for my life partner, a young man who was striving to do the same. It's like so cringy. This is so, hindsight is 2020, baby. In early 2006, my family took our annual trip to the HCI Family Conference. I was busy working with the audiovisual team and had very little free time, but during one of the lunch breaks, I ended up meeting some new friends. Anna. My siblings and I enjoyed meeting Joshua, and as we introduced ourselves, I was amazed that he was able to guess our ages correctly. Usually people would think I was 5 or 7 years older than I really was, and it was getting quite embarrassing. We talked for a while about their family's political campaign and about their move into their new house. Josh mentioned that we would have to come and visit them sometime. I thought, that's so nice, but we live all the way out in Florida. It would never happen. As our conversation came to the end, I remember thinking, I've never met anyone like this before. My thoughts were very different from Anna's. You know what's so crazy about this is that, like, never mind. It's all crazy. Josh, my thoughts were very different from Anna's! Exclamation point. As we talked, I felt God speak to me in my heart that this was the girl I was going to marry someday. I enjoyed our fellowship and then resumed my schedule for the rest of the day. But that night, I still couldn't get Anna off my mind. I went to my dad and told him what I felt God had told me. He said he thought it could be a possibility, and then he asked if I felt ready to get into a relationship. I knew I had a lot to do to get ready if I felt marriage was in the near future. Anna, I was surprised a few weeks later when my dad told our family that we had been invited to Arkansas to spend a few days with the Duggars. The first night at the Duggars' home during family Bible time, Joshua shared his testimony. I was encouraged to see that he was a young man who was accountable to his parents and was striving to keep his heart pure. So is this infamously when he shared what he did to his sisters and was honest with you guys about what he did? That's crazy that you were encouraged by that story and that was an example of striving to keep your heart pure. Like, you're in a cult. You grew up in a cult. You're in a cult. This is a cult, babe. Because seeing sexual abuse as a testimony is so insane. And I understand, like, when you're in it, you obviously can't see that. That's how everybody is portraying it. They're downplaying it. It's benign. It's this. It wasn't that big of a deal. He's confessed. He's better. He's not doing it anymore. He's praying. And it's just like, oh no, baby, this is cult 101. Like, you're in a cult. That's what that is. Like, it may not seem as aggressively effed up as, like, the Warren Jeffs FLDS stuff. But, baby, it's like the same formula where this is wrong and it's being downplayed to you on the basis of religion. That's all I'm going to say about that. My parents explained to us early on that it would be normal to have desires for a relationship, especially when we saw a young man who had the qualities we desired in a future life partner. While we were at the Duggars' home, I noticed Joshua had many of those things I desired in a future partner. I began to commit those desires to the Lord and reaffirmed my commitment to wait on Him to clearly lead me and my parents in the area if it was His will. After all, I was good friends with the Duggar girls, and I didn't want them to think that I was their friend just to get to their brother. Josh, I enjoyed the Kellers' visit and was able to talk with them, to talk some with Anna, and also observe her interacting with my family, trying not to make anything too noticeable to others. The day the Keller family left our home, I immediately talked with Dad again and told him I was sure Anna was the one for me. He agreed that God was moving us in that direction and counseled me to keep praying for our relationship. As we spoke further about the possibilities of courtship, he encouraged me as an 18-year-old man to begin diligently preparing spiritually and financially for the day when God would bring us together. Anna, in 2007, our family made the trip from Florida to Texas again to attend the annual ATI Family Conference. During the time our family spent together, I felt God was showing me that Joshua was the one I would marry someday. In some ways, I felt hopeful, but then again, I thought there was no way it would ever happen. He wasn't showing any girls, including me, any special attention. He just seemed busy, contentedly serving God, waiting for the right one. Josh, after returning home from the conference, my brother and I began working towards opening a small pre-owned car dealership to buy and sell cars. Between work and family, I was extremely busy. Anna, a few weeks later, Dad and I were out running an errand together, and while we were driving home, he asked me if there were any young men God had been speaking to me about. Dad had never asked me a question like this before, but I knew what he was getting at. So I told him I felt God was speaking to my heart about Joshua. Much to my amazement, Dad said he believed Joshua was the one for me. He also mentioned that I should pray for him and his family every day. Then about a week later, we had special company. Josh, I called the Keller family and told them my dad, John, and I were coming to Jacksonville, Florida, near their area, the next day to buy a flatbed truck for my business, and I asked if they might possibly know of a place we could stay. Not only did we have a place to stay at their home, but we also enjoyed some good fellowship with them while we were there. When we left, I could hardly wait for them, especially when we left, I could hardly wait to see them again, especially, oh my God. When we left, I could hardly wait to see them, especially Anna, again. You guys went all the way to Jacksonville, Florida to get that? Okay. And then also, because I'm a cynic, like, the fact that you guys didn't stay in a hotel, that's cheap as hell. We know at this point that Jim Bob has money. Cheap ass. Anna, just before they left, Joshua was talking to my mom and told her he was excited about starting his business and was looking for a house, trying to get ready for a family of his own. When I heard that, my heart jumped. My first thought was that he must have another girl on his mind. It seemed very hard after that to patiently wait on the Lord. I constantly reminded myself I needed to trust God with my future and let him dictate every move of it. Girl, he's at your house. You guys went over there. Your dad's asking you about it, and you think he's talking about some other bitch. Let's be for real for 2 seconds. Like, come on now, Chelsea. Josh, after returning to Arkansas, I started working full time with my business and preparing my heart and my finances for whatever the Lord had next for me. Then in December 2007, Anna's brother called and asked if I would help with an anger resolution seminar in a Florida state prison. I told him I would have to pray about it and immediately felt God say yes. He had to pray about it because he was worried about going to a prison because it felt a little bit too close to home. The next month, I found myself driving the nearly 1,000 miles to North Florida. Anna, I really felt I had given Joshua to the Lord and was content either way about the whole thing. Until Joshua called and said he was on his way. Time and time again during Joshua's visits, I had to give it to the Lord. I still didn't know if Joshua had any interest, but I knew God was more concerned with bringing the right man into my life than I could ever be, and that if it was his will, he would bring it to pass. I didn't know it would be a lot sooner than expected. Jesus Christ. Josh, after the first week of seminars with Anna's brother in the Florida maximum security prison, we returned to the Keller's home. I couldn't wait any longer. I knew the ball was in my court. After dinner and sharing the evening with the family, I asked to talk with Mr. Keller alone. Everyone else went off to bed, and I fumbled to put my thoughts into words and finally got them out. I feel like God is leading me into a relationship with your daughter, Anna. Could I have your permission to court her? Mr. Keller gave me some encouraging words and ended our discussion by saying that he would need a month to pray about it. I went to bed, and I guess sleep eventually came sometime that night because I remember waking up. Mr. Keller pulled me aside after breakfast and told me he had prayed about it, and though he wouldn't quite say yes, he gave me a thumbs up and said, "All the lights are green." Could you imagine? Like, what if he had actually prayed for that month and God was like, yeah, it's not looking good, babe. I've looked it over. Where Josh is headed is probably not where you want to put your daughter. Should have stood on your gut to pray for a month, bro. Mr. Keller set me up with some projects to complete before a set deadline, such as memorizing several passages of scripture. And he also, this is a typo, they have the he in all caps. And he also had me write out the top 5 character qualities I needed to work on in my life and record in a journal the progress I was making in these specific areas. Anna, over the next few days, we had a great time of fellowship while Joshua was visiting. When he left, it seemed like it would be an eternity before we would see each other again. I was so excited when our family would be taking a quote-unquote vacation to Arkansas at the end of June, just a few days after my 20th birthday. I could hardly wait. I often spent evenings crowded around the phone with my siblings, getting to know the Duggar family better and encouraging each other in the ways of the Lord. At the end of our phone call, we would always exchange prayer requests. Without fail, one of the siblings, usually a Duggar, would have an unspoken request, and then everyone would burst out laughing. Needless to say, Joshua and I were grateful for the prayers of our siblings. My mom and I were also able to spend a lot of time together talking about marriage and being a wife, mother, and a keeper of the home. It was a great time to learn and prepare for the future. Josh, I wanted to make our engagement very special. I always think it's really weird that they don't describe him asking her to be in a courtship. Josh, I wanted to make our engagement very special, and I knew the Keller family would be coming to Arkansas a few days after Anna's 20th birthday. About a week before her birthday, I called Mr. Keller and asked him for his permission to surprise Anna by flying down on her birthday and proposing to her. Mr. Keller gave his full blessing. We planned that I would fly in, and Mr. and Mrs. Keller would take Anna out for lunch without her knowing what was really going on. Anna, when my parents said that they wanted to take me out for my birthday, I had no idea what was really planned. I was so focused on leaving for Arkansas in 2 days, I didn't notice how nervous my parents were. I was so focused on leaving for Arkansas in 2 days, I didn't notice how nervous my parents were as we left for the restaurant. Then, a few minutes after we were seated and looking at the menu, I heard a young man say, "Happy birthday, Anna." I looked up and was shocked to see Joshua standing there with a dozen happy birthday and I love you balloons. I was so excited and so nervous all at the same time. A few minutes later, Joshua slipped out of the booth onto one knee, asked me to marry him, and I said yes. We thank God for bringing us together in marriage on September 26, 2008. It's really so crazy that they're about to approach 15 years of marriage. That's insane. It's divorce him, babe.
Divorce, babe, divorce.
We want to encourage all you young ladies out there to wait and save yourself for the person God has for you to marry. When marriage comes, you will be able to say wholeheartedly with us, it was worth the wait. Was it, babe? Was it? Making 7 key commitments. Here are 7 key commitments you can make that will enable you to give your love life to God. 1. I will not date or court anyone who does not love Jesus as much as I do. 2. I will patiently wait on God's timing to bring the man He has for me. 3. I will choose to save my body as a gift for my future spouse. 4. I will choose not to fill my mind with sensual material, R-rated movies or vulgar TV shows, bad internet sites, teen magazines, and romance novels. 5. I will choose wise friends and wholesome activities. 6. I will share my heart and inward struggles regularly with my parents or a loving Christian counselor. 7. I will give my love life to God and focus my time and energy on serving the Lord. God has great things in mind for you. It's up to us to wait on Him and trust His wisdom. And that's the end of the chapter. Definitely you can trust and wait. For sure. I do think it's unrealistic to think that you shouldn't be searching to some extent to try and meet somebody. Like, obviously, I think all of us take breaks when we're like, oh my God, I'm tired of this. Blah, blah, blah. But, well, I guess they don't since they don't date. You know what? I'm trying to apply this advice in general and struggling. So that's the end of the chapter, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. See you for the next one, which is going to come out on next Sunday. I've already recorded it and edited it, so see you then.
Let's go.